Jimin BTS once dated Song Daeun. The internet in chaos. When a single photo of Jimin and Song Daeun resurfaces, the internet explodes, unveiling secrets, lies, and a love story buried beneath fame. The flash of cameras burned against his skin like wildfire. Jimin, look this way. Jimin, is it true? Are you still seeing her? The air outside the studio was suffocating, filled with the frenzy of 100 reporters shouting his name. Jimin froze for a second, the muscles in his jaw tightening as he caught a glimpse of the photo plastered across a journalist's phone screen, his hand intertwined with Song Daeun's. It wasn't supposed to exist anymore. It was from a night 3 years ago. A night he thought had vanished forever. He forced a polite smile, the kind he'd mastered over the years. Charming, controlled, untouchable. No comment, he said softly, before slipping into the van. The door slammed shut, muting the chaos, leaving only the sound of his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Inside, the silence was heavier than any scream. His manager, Hyun-seok, sat across from him, face pale. Jimin, he began cautiously. We need to talk about damage control. The label wants to issue a statement denying everything. They're already drafting. Don't. Jimin cut him off. His voice was quiet, but sharp. Not yet. Hyun-seok blinked. You can't seriously be thinking. I said not yet. Jimin turned his gaze toward the darkened window, his reflection staring back at him. A face loved by millions, but no longer sure who it belonged to. Memories came rushing in, uninvited. Seoul, Winter 2021. A small art gallery hidden in Itaewon. The world outside was roaring with neon, but inside, time had stopped. Daeun had been standing before a painting of a crimson moon, her fingers tracing the air as if she could feel its warmth. She turned when she sensed him watching. You always look like you're running from something, she'd said with that quiet, knowing smile he'd laughed. And you always look like you're waiting for someone. That was how it started. Two people hiding from their own reflections, meeting in stolen hours when fame felt like a cage and love, a crime. The van jerked slightly as it turned into the parking lot beneath HYB headquarters. Reality crashed back. A notification buzzed on his phone. Trending #1 worldwide. Jimin dating Song Daeun. The feed was flooded. Old photos, fan theories, conspiracy threads linking their every move. Someone had even found a bracelet she wore once, identical to one he'd worn on stage. Hyun-seok, Jimin murmured, eyes still fixed on the glowing screen. Who leaked it? We don't know yet. But Daeun's name is all over the media. They're hounding her apartment. A flicker of panic cut through his calm. What? She hasn't responded to anyone. Not even her agency. Jimin's hand tightened around his phone. For a moment, all he could see was her face. Tired eyes, soft voice, whispering in the quiet of that hidden apartment. Promise me, no matter what happens, we stay silent. They don't deserve our truth, he had promised. But now, silence felt like betrayal. When he arrived home that night, the apartment was dark except for the faint hum of the city beyond the glass. He scrolled endlessly through headlines, each one more invasive than the last. Was Jimin's secret romance real? Hidden messages decoded by fans. He tossed the phone aside and leaned against the wall, sliding down until he sat on the cold floor. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to remember. Not the photos, not the scandal, but her laugh, the scent of her hair after rain, the way she'd once said, "You deserve to be seen for who you are, not who they made you." He whispered her name like a confession. Daeun. The next morning, his agency released a statement denying all allegations. The rumors concerning Jimin and actress Song Daeun are false. We ask fans to refrain from speculation. The world moved on, or so they thought. But that night, a post appeared on a private account under Daeun's name. A photo of the Crimson Moon painting, captioned simply, "Some promises were never meant to be broken." Within minutes, the internet caught fire again, and somewhere in the quiet of his apartment, Jimin smiled for the first time in months, sadly, softly, as if the weight of years had finally found its meaning that he didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Apologies, chaos, or perhaps redemption. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid. Because somewhere out there, beneath the same crimson moon, someone remembered too. So would you like me to continue with episode 2, same style and tone, around 5,000 words, where the scandal deepens and Jimin secretly reaches out to Daeun while the world hunts for the truth? Shadows behind the stage as the world demands answers. Jungkook faces betrayal, manipulation, and a truth darker than the scandal itself. One that threatens to tear everything apart. The morning after the storm was cruelly bright. Seoul's skyline glimmered under a washed-out sky, pretending nothing had happened. But for Jungkook, every second felt heavier, every breath more deliberate. He stood before the mirror in the dressing room, staring at his reflection as stylists hovered behind him. Their hands were gentle, but their eyes said what no one dared to voice. He's the one who ruined it. The air smelled like hairspray and tension. Across the room, Jimin scrolled through his phone silently, earbuds in, eyes hollow. John leaned against the wall, arms crossed, the kind of stillness that carried more weight than anger ever could. The interview was set for 10. The script had already been written for them. Smiles, laughter, denial. It would all be erased and rewritten in real time by the company's public relations team. Jungkook adjusted his collar, breaking the silence. They can dress us up all they want. The lie will still stink. Jimin didn't look up. Just get through this, he muttered. We'll deal with the rest later. John's voice was cold. If there's a later. Jungkook turned sharply toward him. You still don't believe me, do you? John met his gaze in the mirror. I believe you broke the rule. I just don't know why. Before Jungkook could answer, the door opened. Their manager entered, face pale, holding a tablet. The live feeds already started trending. They want you ready in 5. No one moved. He hesitated, then continued. And there's something else. He handed Jungkook the tablet. Someone sent this anonymously to the company email last night. Jungkook's heart sank as the video began to play. It wasn't the concert footage. It was backstage, hours before the show. Grainy but clear enough. John and a staff member arguing near the dressing room. A flash drive exchanged. Words too low to hear. Jimin leaned in, eyes wide. What is that? The manager lowered his voice. The sender claimed this as proof John leaked the clip. They said he was paid to do it. The room went cold. John's eyes darkened. That's not me. That's not what happened. Jungkook looked at him, searching for a flicker of truth. Then what did happen? I was getting the original recording, John said, jaw tight. The producer told me to secure it before the media could twist it. Someone must have. Someone. Jimin interrupted. Or you? John glared. You think I'd risk everything for this? You already were part of it, Jimin snapped. You were the one telling us to play safe, to keep quiet. Then this happens. And now there's proof. Fake proof, John shot back. Someone's setting me up. The manager raised a hand, panic creeping into his tone. Keep your voices down. The PR team is right outside, but Jungkook wasn't listening. His mind was spinning, replaying the video, the timing, the betrayal. He remembered John's warning the night before. Not everyone who smiles at you wants you to survive this. Was that guilt speaking, or warning? Who else had access to the footage? Jungkook asked. The manager hesitated. Only internal staff. Producers. Editors. PR. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. And the company has motive to blame one of us. John's expression hardened. You think this is them? I think, Jungkook said quietly. Someone wants to control the story before we do. The tension was suffocating. Jimin paced, rubbing his temples. So what? This is bigger than us now? A corporate cover-up? John shook his head. No, this feels personal. The door burst open. A PR agent stepped in briskly. Your live in 2 minutes. Keep it light, stay on script, and for God's sake, smile. They walked out one by one. Cameras, bright lights, the smell of stage powder. Everything looked perfect again. They took their seats side by side, the host greeting them with cheerful professionalism. We're so glad to have you here today. The internet's been on fire since last night. How are you holding up? Jimin smiled faintly, voice controlled. We're doing fine. It was just a passionate moment on stage, part of the performance. The audience laughed. The host beamed. John kept his hands folded tightly, eyes fixed on the floor. Jungkook stared straight into the camera, his pulse drumming against his ribs. Jungkook, the host said, turning to him. People have been saying your hug was real, emotional. What was going through your mind? He hesitated, the script echoing in his head. Say it was a gesture of friendship. Say it was fan service. Instead, he looked up and said, sometimes, the stage isn't big enough to hold everything you feel. The host blinked, unsure how to react. The crowd murmured. The PR agent backstage went pale. Jimin shifted uncomfortably. forcing another smile. He means we're very close as a team. We trust each other. But Jungkook's eyes stayed on the camera, unwavering. Trust is a dangerous word when you don't know who's watching. The host laughed awkwardly, moving on to safer questions. When the cameras finally cut, the three of them sat frozen in silence. John spoke first, voice low. You're going to make them come after you. Jungkook exhaled, wiping his palms on his pants. They already are. Back in the hallway, security escorted them through the crowd of reporters. Flashbulbs exploded, questions fired like bullets. Jungkook, was that hug real? Is there tension between you and John? Did the company order you to stay silent? Jimin lowered his head. John pushed past the cameras. Jungkook said nothing. When they reached the van, he turned to the manager. Find out who leaked that video. Don't tell the company. The manager hesitated. If they find out, they already know, Jungkook interrupted. I just want to know why. The manager nodded reluctantly as the van pulled away, soul blurred by. Endless lights, endless noise. Jimin stared out the window, whispering something under his breath, too soft to hear. John sat motionless, jaw clenched, and Jungkook, lost in the hum of the tires and the distant rain returning, closed his eyes. He saw again the moment on stage. The warmth, the silence, the truth trying to break free, and realized something terrifying. The concert was never the beginning of the chaos that it was the result. And whatever had started this had been waiting long before the spotlight ever hit his face. The war beneath the lights as Jimin and Songdoon planned to expose the truth. Powerful forces inside HYBE fight back, turning their love story into a dangerous game of control and survival. That the next morning, the world looked unchanged, but everything beneath it had shifted. Jimin stood on the rooftop of his apartment building, the USB drive cold between his fingers. The sunrise painted the horizon in gold, but his mind was far from peace. Below him, Seoul shimmered, a city built on secrets, masks, and unspoken contracts. He replayed Juno's words over and over. You try to expose me, they'll bury you both. He'd seen enough to know it wasn't a bluff. By the time he returned to Daeun's place, she was already awake, pacing the floor, a laptop open before her. She looked up the moment he entered. The files you brought, they're encrypted, but I found something strange. He moved closer. On the screen was a chain of hidden metadata, buried beneath the image file. Coordinates, timestamps, even an internal signature code that matched HYBE's media server. Daeun zoomed in. Look, this wasn't just Juno. This file passed through someone else's system. Someone higher. Jimin frowned. Who? She hesitated. It's a proxy route. But one of the IPs leads to a restricted department, the executive floor. He froze. The executive floor? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Whoever authorized the leak. It came from inside the board. The air went still. For a long moment, all Jimin could hear was the faint hum of the refrigerator, the city breathing just beyond the window. So this wasn't just about us, he murmured. Daeun nodded. No, it's about control. Later that day, Jimin met Hyunseok in a quiet tea house on the outskirts of Seoul. He hadn't told anyone else, not even the members. The fewer people who knew, the safer they were. Hyunseok arrived looking exhausted, dark circles beneath his eyes. You shouldn't have called me here, he said quietly. They're monitoring everything you do. I know, Jimin replied. That's why we're here. He slid the USB drive across the table. I need you to see what's on this. Hyunseok's brows furrowed. What is it? Proof, Jimin said. Of who leaked the photo. Hyunseok hesitated before plugging it into his laptop. His eyes scanned the data, his expression slowly changing, from confusion to disbelief to fear. This, he whispered. This signature belongs to Director Han. Jimin leaned back, his voice steady. He's the one who authorized the upload. Hyunseok swallowed hard. You don't understand what you're doing. Han controls half the company's media strategy. He has connections everywhere. Press, investors, even government ties. I don't care, Jimin said, eyes sharp. He used my life to manipulate headlines. He destroyed Daeun's name for a publicity stunt. Hyunseok looked at him, truly looked, at the quiet fire behind his calm tone. You're not the same person you were, are you? Jimin smiled faintly. No, I stopped pretending. That night, Daeun and Jimin met again in her studio. Rain poured down outside, streaking the glass like tears. She was sitting by the window, holding her phone, scrolling through the news. They've started pushing a new narrative, she said. That I was the one who leaked it, for clout. Jimin clenched his jaw. They're trying to discredit you before we can prove anything. She looked up, eyes tired but fierce. Then we go first. He hesitated. You mean publicly? Yes. She stood, her posture straight despite the storm outside. We go live. Together. We show them the files, the truth. We take back our story. He stared at her for a moment, torn between admiration and fear. You realize what that means? Once we speak, there's no coming back. No more privacy, no more control. Her gaze softened. They already took that from us. This is all we have left, to choose our silence or our voice. For a moment, Jimin said nothing. Then he nodded. Tomorrow night. But the system moved faster than either of them expected. The following morning, Jimin's phone buzzed nonstop. Notifications poured in. Headlines, hashtags, breaking news alerts. HYB to take legal action against malicious defamation. Leaked internal footage shows Jimin's secret meetings under investigation. Song Da-eun allegedly blackmailed a HYB employee. It was a full-scale counterattack that Da-eun's phone rang endlessly. Reporters, agencies, strangers shouting threats. Someone had leaked CCTV footage of Jimin entering her apartment late at night. Blurry, out of context, but enough to twist the story into something poisonous. She threw the phone onto the couch, voice shaking. They're framing us. Jimin's face hardened. Then they're scared. The walls seemed to close in around them. Outside, thunder cracked like the world itself was tearing open. Jimin, she whispered, stepping closer. What if they ruin you? He looked at her with quiet certainty. Then I'll remind them who I am before they try. There was a defiance in his tone, a storm of his own. He wasn't just the idol the world adored anymore. He was a man reclaiming his truth, even if it meant setting fire to the illusion built around him that he reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining, steady, real, unshaken. Tomorrow, he said, we end this. And as lightning flashed outside the window, their reflections merged in the glass. Two people against the glare of an empire built on silence that I in the distance. The city pulsed like a living thing, hungry for the next story. What it didn't know was that the story had already begun to fight back. But would you like me to continue with episode 5, where Jimin and Da-eun's live broadcast exposes the corruption, but the fallout triggers a dangerous retaliation that puts both their lives and careers on the line? The broadcast Jimin and Song Da-eun go live to reveal the truth behind the scandal. But as their confession spreads, the industry strikes back harder than either of them imagined. The rain hadn't stopped for days. Seoul shimmered under a veil of water, every streetlight bending through the droplets like fractured glass. In a quiet corner of the city, behind drawn curtains and silent phones, Jimin and Song Da-eun sat side by side. Two fugitives of fame, holding on to something more fragile than love. Truth. Da-eun's laptop hummed softly before her. On the screen, the countdown timer ticked toward midnight. She had set the live broadcast to go public exactly at midnight. Symbolic, one new day to erase the lies. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked, her voice low. Once we go live, there's no undoing it. Jimin's eyes met hers, unwavering. I've lived my whole life being told what I can and can't say. Tonight, I speak for myself. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the camera. The faint glow illuminated their faces, pale, calm, resolute. Outside, thunder rumbled, as if the sky itself were holding its breath. She hit go live. Within seconds, the screen flooded with hearts, comments, usernames flying past faster than either of them could read. Fans, reporters, strangers, the whole world was watching. Jimin leaned forward, his voice steady but raw. This isn't about rumors anymore. It's about the truth that was taken from us. He paused, his eyes flickering toward Da-eun, then back to the lens. Yes, I was in a relationship with Song Da-eun. It was private. It was real. And it was ours. The comments exploded, shocked emojis, frantic typing, disbelief. Da-eun took a breath and continued, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger. 3 weeks ago, an old photo was leaked. That photo wasn't an accident. It was planned. Someone inside HYB used it to manipulate the public, to distract from something else. Jimin slid the USB drive onto the table. This, he said, is proof. Files from HYB's internal servers, metadata, transfer logs. and authorizations showing who leaked the image. It wasn't a fan. It wasn't us. It came from a department executive. The chat feed turned chaotic. What? He's exposing the company. Is this real? Director Han. Daeun said quietly, her gaze steady on the camera. The same man responsible for suppressing artists, silencing scandals, and fabricating narratives to protect corporate interests. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Jimin could almost feel the pulse of the internet. Millions of people leaning closer to their screens. He took Daeun's hand in his thumb brushing across her knuckles. We didn't want this fight, but if our love became their weapon, then it's time to take it back. Across Seoul, in HYB's glass tower, alarms were already sounding. Inside a conference room, Director Han slammed his fist against the table. Cut the stream now. It's not hosted on our servers, one technician stammered. They're streaming through a mirrored VPN. We can't trace the origin. Han's face twisted in rage. Then drown it out. Push a counter-narrative. I want every platform flooded before sunrise. Within minutes, fake stories began to surface online. Jimin's confession manipulated by ex-lover. Song Daeun's fabricated evidence exposed. The war for truth had begun. Back in the apartment, Jimin and Daeun watched as the viewer count climbed into the millions. Their names trended worldwide again, but this time, not for speculation. For rebellion. Daeun's phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from unknown numbers. Threats. Warnings. Offers. Jimin ignored his. We did it, he whispered, as if convincing himself, but Daeun's eyes were fixed on the screen. Look, the live chat was changing. Automated accounts, bots, spamming hate comments. Thousands of them, overwhelming the feed. Then, suddenly, the stream began to glitch. The image flickered, the sound warped. They're attacking the server, Daeun muttered, typing furiously. I can reroute once, maybe twice. Before she could finish, the screen went black. For a second, there was only the sound of their breathing. Jimin's jaw tightened. They killed the broadcast. Daeun slammed her hands against the table, frustration breaking through her composure. Everything's gone. The files, the upload, they wiped the trace. He stood, pacing, the storm outside reflected in his movements. Then we release it another way. Media outlets. Journalists we can trust. She hesitated. Do you still trust anyone? The question hit harder than he expected. He stopped, meeting her eyes. I trust you. The silence that followed was thick with exhaustion, fear, and something deeper, a fragile relief that even in the wreckage, they still had each other. Then, softly, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't spam. It was a private message from an anonymous account. Only 2 words. You're next. Her face drained of color. Jimin. He took the phone, reading the message twice before looking back at her. They're scared. That means we hit something real. But if they come after you, they already have, he said. Now it's my turn. He grabbed his coat and the backup drive. I'm going to someone who can't be silenced. A journalist outside the entertainment system. Someone who won't bow to HYBE. Who? He paused at the door. An old friend from my trainee days. She left the industry years ago to report the truth, not protect it. Daeun caught his arm. Then I'm coming with you. No, he said firmly. They'll be watching you. Stay here. Hide the original files. If something happens to me, don't say that. She snapped. He smiled faintly. Then promise me one thing. No matter what they do, don't stop believing in what we had. That's the one thing they can't rewrite. And before she could argue, he was gone, disappearing into the storm-soaked streets of Seoul, where the neon lights bled red against the wet pavement. Daeun stood at the window long after he vanished, watching the city pulse like a living, dangerous thing. In the glass, her reflection looked back at her, not as the woman in the scandal, not as the accused, but as someone who had finally stopped hiding. Behind her, the laptop flickered once more, a faint echo of their stream struggling to reconnect. And then, just for a heartbeat, a new message appeared on the blank screen. We're watching you both. The room went dark. Would you like me to continue with episode 6, where Jimin meets the journalist and uncovers the real reason behind HYB's cover-up? A secret far larger than his relationship with Daeun?